The situation in South Africa is worsening as President Zuma fights to hold on to power, and the ruling African National Congress has been pushing some very extreme policies on land reform that are frankly right out of the Robert Mugabe playbook from Zimbabwe. And outside of the political sphere, the situation is getting dire as well. I see stories and have viewers in South Africa email me weekly with stories of white farmers being brutally murdered simply because they own land and are white, with statistics showing that you are 4 times more likely to be murdered if you're a white farmer versus the rest of the South African population. To cover for his failures, his corruption, and the ANC's ineptitude to achieve real economic reform, President Zuma has begun to scapegoat the white minority in order to rally the black majority to his side. And the saddest part of all is it appears to be working. Zuma is literally working hard to eliminate Nelson Mandela's dream of a multiracial and pluralistic South Africa. But Zuma is not alone. The radical left-wing economic freedom fighters are the reason the ANC is turning hard left. The EFF leader, Julius Malema, still makes racially charged statements like, "The country is still in the hands of white people." It is this pull from the EFF and Malema that is allowing Zuma to join in calling for white land to be expropriated without compensation. This racially motivated thinking and policy creation is now leaking into academia in South Africa as well. Economics professor Chris Malakane from the University of Witwatersrand, who advises the finance minister of South Africa, has some downright extremist ideas for the ANC in what he calls a new economic plan. Quote, expropriation of white monopoly capitalist establishments such as banks, insurance companies, mines, and other monopoly industries, and expropriation of all land without compensation to the ownership of the state, unquote. Look, that's communism plain and simple. But that shouldn't be too surprising, as President Zuma was once a member of the Communist Party of South Africa until 1990. But it's not the communist tone that is so worrisome. It's the racist, anti-white tone of these proposed reforms that are so disturbing. It's easy to see South Africa heading down the same path as Zimbabwe, or more recently Venezuela, should reforms like those proposed by Professor Malakane be implemented. In the meantime, the hyped-up racial rhetoric is leading to an increase in anti-white crime, as I mentioned, and some of them are very horrific, with reports of savagely brutal murders of white farmers in particular, and some details so graphic I'm hesitant to share them with you. But let me just say this, torture is often involved. But what is more alarming is that all this racial tension and support for the corrupt ANC is being propped up by South Africa's state broadcaster, SABC. According to South African journalist Ed Herbst, quote, SABC deliberately does not broadcast details of farm murders or of the resultant trials and never attends the farm murder press conferences, even though invited. He continues, the reason for this pervasive censorship by omission by the ANC-controlled state broadcaster is obvious. It does not wish to broadcast anything that would create empathy for whites or detract from the ANC's routine race card message that the opposition Democratic Alliance is a white party and that whites are racist snakes, unquote. I see many parallels here with SABC and the way the BBC, the CBC, and the American news networks cover up or refuse to report on issues around Islamic extremism, illegal immigrant or migrant crime, and anything generally that does not meet their left-wing worldview. Thankfully, the internet and the alternative media is filling the void in South Africa, especially on the topic of these horrific farm murders. But as I've stated at the end of every video I've done on South Africa, and unlike Venezuela, I truly believe there is hope for the country. The opposition in South Africa is strengthening, and this morning news that the ANC may try to dump President Zuma. Bloomberg News stated that they had 2 sources within the party that removal of Zuma by the ANC was being discussed, but the ANC have since denied that report. Lastly, I often hear the term white genocide being thrown around by North Americans when discussing the situation in South Africa. This is a mistake in vocabulary, in my opinion, and it diminishes real genocides. There have been 3,000 farm murders since 1994. A large number, 3,000 too many. But genocide? No. We have to be careful with words and terms like white genocide that are too closely connected with white supremacy and white nationalism. These farm murders are racist hate crimes, of that there is no doubt. And the refusal of the state broadcaster to cover it is also completely racist towards the white South Africans. But using the term white genocide is hyperbole, and it won't help with outreach for opposition movements who want a multiracial South Africa, a rainbow nation, as Nelson Mandela once envisioned. For the Rebel.Media, I'm Christopher Wilson. Thanks for watching. You know, I'm going to keep a close eye on the South African situation as it continues to develop. So make sure you click subscribe on our Rebel Media YouTube channel so you never miss an update.